published this book, which was basically the concept was looking at how photography was kind of documenting the landscape of the American West, but really looking at also the social and human interaction uh, in the landscape. So the exhibition in the book really had sort of three segments. One was more inspired by Ansel Adams. This is William Clift, and looking at Elliott Porter and the traditional ways of documenting the American West in the 1950s. So the show was from 1950 to the 1970s, basically. And the second section was one that I had been more engaged in, really, was really looking at social landscapes. So Robert Adams, Gary Winogrand, Lee Friedlander, Meridell, many people who were looking at the different ways that were integrating with the landscape, and were changing the landscape or responding to it. And the third part was basically mixed media, artists looking at some more of the political side and working on mixed media. So out of that, I also at the same time, is this my cursor, was working on a project with Mark Klett and Joanne Verberg called the Rephotographic Survey, which many people know about, with a project to go back and locate sites that were photographed by 19th century US Geological Survey photographers, and to basically reoccupy that space without a preconception of what we would see, what we would find. And so we did 3 years of work all through the American West, with going back to the landscapes to find out what we could learn from being in the same place that photographer stood 100 years. And Mark has since gone on to do Third View and use that work as a well of visual information. And also the project was, could we do something that would be useful to a number of different disciplines? So sort of like the Water in the West project, we flew to Washington, D.C. to see if it would be of interest to the Department of the Interior. Would the project be of interest to landscape architects who are looking at how the natural landscape changed? And also during that time, I worked with a landscape historian named Kenny Helfand, who is professor at the University of Oregon, Eugene, looking at focusing on Colorado landscape and the history of photography, and again, the different ways that photography was documenting the social, the natural, and the environmental history of that landscape. This was a project that was sponsored by the Landscape Architecture Foundation. Unfortunately, you all probably know the publication field is very frustrating, and the photos were really poorly reproduced, and it never really got much traction, but it was a great project.
But we were really both interested in regional issues, regional ideas. And so I grew up in the Central Valley of California, which is kind of like our version of the Midwest. It's a very big agricultural area, and conservative compared to the rest of the state. It's not what the rest of California is like. And I worked with a photographer, Stephen Johnson, and we're lucky to work with a writer, Gerald Haslam, and we spent many years looking at this region and trying to make sense of it. We all came from the Central Valley, and we all left the Central Valley to move to the coast and have our careers. But we found ourselves drawn back to this place. And so this was our multi-year project looking at regional issues. The University of California Press published it in 1993. So it was for us kind of the first big idea. The next project I worked on was with the writer Gray Brecken, who's an environmental historian, geographer, and he and I spent years traveling, flying, driving all over the state of California. I got a crash course on environmental history of California for phrase eyes, and we worked together to produce a book about the kind of the environmental history of California from the past and then up to the present. And it too was also kind of just quite useful for me personally as a photographer, an artist, a person, kind of learning from this work and learning a lot from about my home, about California. So I think that's a theme that keeps going through with what we did. And then Peter Goen again from Nevada and a writer named Mary Webb and I did a project on the Truckee River in Nevada, which flows from Lake Tahoe, California, in through the city of Reno, and then goes out to a lake called Pyramid Lake. And it's really about a kind of environmental water war between the city of urban environment of Reno and the ranchers of Western Nevada and the Paiutes living in around Pyramid Lake. And it's still going on, it's still war. And it was kind of a fascinating project. Again, another real learning experience for me to just try to get my brain wrapped around the water issue. This was really came out of our Water in the West project. So this was a project that Peter and I, Mary, did together, and it was kind of a subset of the larger Water in the West group. And then, Ellen, I took a remarkable turn and went off into a whole other direction, which was I have always been fascinated by water as a commons, as a shared space, as something we depend on, or it's important. And I began to look around for other types of commons, including government and parts of government. And I found the public library was actually something that was pretty interesting and pretty important. And I realized, like, water was sort of under attack and had a lot of interesting and important issues. So I just gave myself, like all these projects, an open end to follow my nose and see what came out of this. And what came out was this book, and it really kind of surprising that Bill Moyers wrote the introduction, Ann Patchett wrote the afterward, and then Toni Morrison wrote the endorsement. So it was something that had a real resonance. It sold out in the first week of the publication, which is kind of weird for a photo book, but it also made me realize there's a lot of interest in this subject, this idea. So
after Bob published that book with Princeton Architectural Press, it was an interesting series of meetings when we would go to the meeting with the press and say that we wanted a book that would be a coffee table type book. And every meeting, the book got smaller and smaller and smaller. And they said, it is about the public and it's about access. It's about the libraries and reading. And so the book became very small and very successful. But at the same time, I wanted to see if there was a way we could do something that was a little more elegant, was more of an artist's expression. And so we worked with a guy named Ed Marcon in Tieton, Washington, to do two limited edition books that were kind of based on my interest in, like, Lee Friedlander's American Monument, which had these photographs that were post-bound and could jump next one. So we did one on the public library, and then we did a second one on more recently on the Global Library Project. And the idea was to get these out in a different form. These are large books, limited edition with 50 original prints in each book, each album. And they could be taken out with the post binding, make an exhibition. So we've been trying to work on getting those out and finalize the project.
Placed it in archives.
Placed in archives.
So we are currently consumed with just that. We're working on publishing the book. We've had some success in connecting with people that could be part of it. And this is what we will be doing. It's a project that came out of the American Public Library, but it soon moved into this global library project. Again, it's a commons. So it's like water in our water work, but it's something that also is a different form of a shared, something shared space. So realized that global work, we've traveled many parts of the world, and the project's gotten enormous, and we decided to focus it on libraries in times of conflict, in places of conflict. And that, to us, made a lot of sense. And it seemed to be a lot of people said, yeah, that's probably where we should go with this big, enormous project. So that's consuming our time now. I don't know if
Well, just that I would say that it kind of relates to, we're going to go back now to look at the water work that Bob has been doing. But this is a place in Berlin called the Empty Library. It's an artist installation by Misha Ullman, who's an Israeli artist. And it brings to mind a lot of things even from seeing Susan's presentation the other day, that how do we photograph what's been lost? How do we photograph what's invisible? How do we photograph what's been erased? How we've erased cultural memory? And that's really what this piece is about. And I think it's becoming a focus of a lot of the work that Bob and I want to continue doing on water issues.
Yeah, so this just quickly, this is the place where the Nazis burned the books in Berlin in 1933, one of the places. And this artist created a space that could house all the missing books, the empty library. And so that's, I think, an interesting artistic expression of something that happened in the past. So just, I will go through, these are kind of a large, not a large, a selection of images from many years, 40 years of work, but it's looking at a theme that was common throughout the work, which was water. The Mona Lake, 1979, was the first place I really examined water-related issues. So water war between LA and this lake that had drained and the environmental consequences of it. And that began my real interest in connection to water and environment. And looking at some of the travels I was taking at the time in Spain, at the Alhambra. This is another water-based story of this civilization in Granada and now the Alhambra that was based on water. Fascinating, in-depth study that could be done there. But this is representing that. And also in Angkor Wat in Cambodia, the idea of a civilization built on water, I call the hydraulics civilization, and the issues that brought the civilization to fore, and then also what the water was part of its demise today, looking at. So these are just going through and looking at over time, about 20 years later, trip to Vietnam with Ellen and her brother, who was a helicopter pilot in the war. We went to places he had been stationed, visit Common Bay. This is where a lot of the mangrove swamps that used to surround the bay are now being replaced by shrimp farms. So that's the shrimp we eat in our salad. So this is another look at, it wasn't intentionally looking at global water, but it was a theme that developed. The American Water in the West project was intentional. Each of the people in the project had a specific thing, or like Peter and I teamed up on Pyramid Lake. But this was some of my other water work, and taking a photograph in 1986 in the headwaters of the Colorado River in Rocky Mountain National Park. And I was really sort of interested in the beginnings of where water comes from. I was surprised when all the people in the background lined up and had matching outfits, and the little boy that stared at me, right, like, oh, never gave up because he saw the 4x5 view camera I was using. But for me, understanding this in its own context when I took this picture is one thing, but then about 20 years later, Ellen and our son Walker and I went to the end of the Colorado River, the Gulf of Mexico, where it empties out. This used to be a vast water shed, very rich area, and it looks like this today. And this is because the water has been used upstream by all the interests, both in the United States and agriculture in Mexico. So we looked at what was left in the delta of the Colorado River. This was a eco-tourist development that was going in. It was very, they were very hopeful they could restore this area for tourism. Unfortunately, right after I took this picture, this became a major drug route and human trafficking corridor. So I don't think this is there. But one morning, we were taken out on a kayak at sunrise by a Yaqui indigenous guy who showed us this. He had restored this marsh with agricultural wastewater. This is water coming off the field. The Mexican government had not designated any water for the environment, but somehow or another, he was taking that water and created this, and he had tears in his eyes. We were out there at sunrise, just watching the pelicans flying over the what he had created. Yeah, people with him. I also worked with a guy named Jacques Leslie, who's an environmental writer, the war correspondent in Vietnam, and then later has been writing about water. And he wrote about a woman named Maida Potkar, who was one of the Goldman Award winners. She was working on trying to stop a huge dam development project on the Narmada River in India. And this is a place that's very sacred. You can see there's a pilgrims that are doing a circumnavigation of the whole river. It's considered one of the 7 sacred rivers of India. And Maida was vowing to drown herself in the rising waters of the Narmada because she had been able to get the government, the World Bank, to stop funding this dam. And unfortunately, the Indian they did. She was successful, but then the Indian government finished it, so the waters were rising. And just at this moment when we went to visit her, the drought. So the waters, she didn't die, and good and bad. I mean, she didn't. She wanted to make a protest, and her work was very significant. Is still, but she was working with the indigenous people in the area that were being driven out, and a lot of those people, like here in Delhi, wound up just becoming homeless. They were farmers. Some of them were placed on relocation areas for them to start their lives anew farming, but usually the land was sterile and it was impossible for them to live. So, this was just one example of that project. And then I was hired by a group called the International Rivers to go to Guatemala and essentially photograph the same story. This is a group of Highland Mayans who spoke no Spanish. It was very interesting. We went there to interview them 30 years after their village had been massacred. 444 of their village were killed by the government, and these were the survivors. So the government thought they were resisting a big dam project that was going to flood their land. So they wound up slaughtering them. And then these people, very, very interesting, they wanted to talk badly about their experience, this trauma from 30 years before. So we were there, a filmmaker and myself, and I was a photographer, sound recording, recorded their stories, their lives. They have this trauma that stays with them. So this is a school for the kids and a library that has this mural that lists all the names of the people in that village that were killed. So this is where these ideas of why people from, say, places like Guatemala have to leave because they're being driven out through resistance to dams or droughts or whatever, and it feeds into the immigration issues that we have today. Pyramid Lake, another project that Peter and I worked on with Mary Webb, looking at Native people and their sacred sites at Pyramid Lake, and these are some images from that project. The San Joaquin River in California is considered one of the most polluted big rivers in the country. So this was an image that tied in with the earlier image of the Kesterson National Wildlife Refuge that became a sort of a sump for all the toxic runoff from the streams in the San Joaquin and the rivers that they bioaccumulate into the river. And it created this disaster natural wildlife center becoming a toxic waste site and famous for the environmental disasters. And then just this year, Ellen and I were in England and Wales, and we went to this beautiful place called Hay on Wye, which has a river going through it called the River Wye, W-Y-E, and we discovered it too was an example of environmental waste coming from this intense concentration of chicken farms all around in the surrounding area, and their effluence goes into the river. And there's a huge, right, this is happening right now. There's a huge groundswell from the local population, the church, all the local people are coming together over this issue. And this was just one more of many places that we have seen this type of environmental activism coming out of this, people's lives being threatened by this enormous pollution. We also, my earlier work also included some places like this river called the New River on the border between Mexico and the United States. This was the time when the maquiladores, the American businesses, would set up shop on the border. They didn't have the same wages. They didn't have the same environmental rules. So they dumped their waste in the ground and it would wind up in this river. The irony is the river flows from Mexico back into the United States. So we're getting our own pollution. And this was considered one of the worst small rivers in terms of uranium mining pollution. I mean, these are just different places that we wound up visiting over time and aftermath of that. And then just looking at the idea of water in its context of the Central Valley and agriculture, we wound up spending a lot of time understanding and trying to make sense of it. Joan Didion has a wonderful quote about water, wealth, contentment, health in the city of Modesto, which I won't read, but it's very relevant to our work. Iceland, it's interesting to go to Iceland to see how good they are in terms of their environmental reusing geothermal as a source of energy. 90% of the homes in Iceland use geothermal to heat themselves. So it's actually kind of astonishing. It's nice to see that. This is an area near the Blue Lagoon that it's a geothermal center. But it's also interesting to see in Iceland, this was a dam being built in the central highlands of Iceland that was a huge dam, biggest dam in Europe. And it was all entire production from this dam later was going to produce energy to make aluminum cans for Alcoa. And so there was a huge uproar over this issue. This was the year before that started. And but looking at these massive scale re-engineering of not just the American West, but all of the world on a large scale. This is another example of a place in Colorado called Red Mountain. And it's interesting because looking at that in the Water in the West project, we also drew from a lot of philosophers, writers, journalists, academics that wrote about water. This is a guy named Donald Worster. I will read this quote, it's short. Water in our present economy has no intrinsic value, no integrity that must be respected. It has now become a commodity that is bought and sold and used to make other commodities. All mystery departs from its depths. All gods depart. All contemplation of its flow ceases. And in that new language of market calculation lies an assertion of a power over nature, of a domination that is absolute, total, and free from all restraint. And it was one thing that I did begin to kind of keep those ideas in my mind as I was photographing. And even when I made this picture called Private Property, like Tahoe, California, which is both sort of ironic, and I love the geese floating underneath the dock, but it's also something that to me kind of spoke to that issue of this is sort of this privatization of public spaces. Another the issue of water issue in Utah, which we explored, the drying up of salt Great Salt. This was Lake Berryessa. Beneath this reservoir is the village that Dorothea Lange and Perkle Jones photographed in the 1950s, a farming community that was flooded by this reservoir. Just one of many stories like this, but they published a book about this that was pretty important too, and the death of a valley. So this became something that I wanted to follow up on. Our son Walker, who in this picture is 2, was dragged all over the West his whole young years. Poor guy. I mean, he really didn't have a choice, but he now is a journalist and travels all over the world for CBS News. But this was following the Owens Valley Aqueduct from the upper part of the Owens Valley down to LA, and this huge pipe contains massive amounts of water there was a water war in 1922 that was the local ranchers trying to basically stop their water from being taken by the city of LA. And they lost. And today we have this big pipe in a dry valley. So it's just very interesting for me to kind of follow these things, that these historical incidents that we can still connect to or have some connection with. Flood irrigation in the Central Valley, laser leveling of a large corporate farm near Bakersfield, California. I was also commissioned to, this is a strange one, be a artist in resident at San Jose's wastewater treatment plant, which is a very strange thing to do, but actually turned out to be really important in terms of understanding. I've always been looking at water upstream. What happens when you use water and then downstream after that? So, and there's a quote, another last quote I'd like to recall by Victor Hugo. It says, "The sewer is the conscience of the city. Everything there converges and confronts everything else. In that livid spot, there are shades, but there are no longer any secrets." And to me, it was kind of the fascinating thing that our civilization wouldn't exist without wastewater treatment. We could not have the big population around the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, without wastewater treatment plants. If we didn't do that, our civilization would collapse. But are we willing to pay the price and do what it takes to keep that going, that huge infrastructure? So these were things, questions that came out of my doing this project that made me much more aware of what, where this goes, and are we willing to make that commitment in the future to sustain this type? And if we don't, then what happens? And when water infrastructure goes up, it goes bust, like in Rome or Angkor Wat, it's a telltale indicator of the decline of that society. And, we can ask that question. One other just recent photo, this is 2023, we went to a place where there was a lake called the Tulare Lake. It's the largest lake west of the Mississippi in the 19th century, until it all got drained for agricultural use. And there's no lake anymore, except in 2023, there was the reemergence of the lake because we had an unusually wet year, big snowfall. And so this whole vast lake reemerged. It was like this disappearing lake that never died, but it was filled with, chemicals and rusting equipment. It was not nice, but it was an interesting sign of kind of how nature sometimes comes back. And then just one other, the Dust Bowl area in Oklahoma. This is the center of that area, which was the largest environmental catastrophe in the United States in the 1930s, due to mostly the way we farmed the land there, very bad. And when the land was completely gone, much of it was blown away, the federal government came in and bought up the failed farms and turned some of them into grassland. So this is the Rita Blanca National Grasslands in Oklahoma. This is really pretty interesting as an attempt to try to restore the land. Trouble is, they're still draining the underground aquifer, which is now within the next 10, 15, 20 years is going to drain dry. That's what the Midwest depends on for their water right now. And once that's gone, are we going to see another Dust Bowl migration, people out of this area that can't stay there and can't afford to live there? So I think part of our interest too is turning to looking at projects that restore, projects that try to reclaim or turn the page on the disasters that we so often focus on. This is called Two Scientists Discussing the Demise and Restoration of California's Salmon. We actually wound up, I was part of the commission I got from International Rivers was to photograph the Klamath River in Northern California and Oregon in 2007. And it was a big story, a terrible long-term consequence of 4 large dams on the Klamath that were just basically destroying the salmon run that these native people at the mouth of the salmon had depended on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so this was part of that story. Well, the good news is that just this last year, just this 2024, finally, everybody, all the players the native people, the farmers, everybody, the regulators agreed that taking the dams out was the right thing to do. This is one of the dam sites that Ellen and I photographed this spring, just 6 months ago, that shows what used to be a huge reservoir and a big dam is now gone. It's another dam site. So we're really very interested in how places like the Klamath can become a subject for our future look into water in the West. What?
I was just going to add, many of you have probably seen, because the New York Times has done several articles. They worked with a lot of the native teenagers, the indigenous from various different tribes, and they took the teenagers and trained them in kayaking, and they actually took them to Chile to also look at how people had been displaced by dams. Indigenous peoples had been displaced by the dam building. And so these young teenagers, they learned the kayaking, and after the dams came down this July, they went 300 miles. They kayaked 300 miles from the very headwaters all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And these kids are, if you can watch the YouTube or any of the stories that Oregon Public Media, I guess, did, it's just so inspiring to see that the landscape is healing, that nature is coming back, and these tribes actually can now swim in the water. They had people that would talk about how, as they grew up around the Klamath River, they couldn't swim in it because it was so polluted. It ran so slowly. So it was a very, very exciting story, and I think a metaphor for a lot of what we want to do.
Another bit of good news is this: just a few months ago, the first salmon swam all the way from the Pacific Ocean, 300 miles up to the headwaters of the Klamath to spawn. So this is like, it chokes you up just thinking about the fact that maybe nature can heal, and it can heal given a chance more quickly than sometimes we think. And this is a kind of a wetlands area up in Northern California, part of the restoration. So for me, this is kind of where I think we might go with this our renewed interest in re-involvement in water issues. And I have to thank Meridel because she invited us to come to her presentation in London just a couple months ago when she was doing her project, Eden in Iraq, the wastewater garden project. And here she is with her collaborator, the guy in the suit. And they both talked about this remarkable project, but she invited us to come hear this. And it helped us in a way coming back into this idea of water and the importance of it and the hopefulness, the fact that we don't need to always concentrate on the disaster. We need to know how things are in terms of being bad, but we need, as artists, to be able to find ways to also inspire people, reinterpret what can be done in a positive direction and move on. I mean, we don't want to get stuck in, how bad things really are. So anyway, thank you, Meredith. And
thank you.
Thank
so
you.
I think
Wow. Oh, what am I supposed to do? I unmuted. Okay, is everybody unmuted? Are you going to say anything about the water and power portfolio? Anything about that?
Yeah, we are looking at, we've put together a portfolio, and we just actually sold the first copy of it to this Nevada Arts Museum in Reno, which was a surprise. But I think it's going to be, for us, like the library work, which here,
Maybe we should.
a way for us to go back into this and revisit it and build on it. The reason I showed you the collection of images that were here today is that it's 40 years worth of photography from various projects that weren't necessarily about water, but wound up having this kind of stream of water, so to speak, going through, uniting all of these images. So that portfolio we'll probably build on. Yeah.
Bob, can you unshare the screen so we can see everybody? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but see if you can unshare. Stop share.
Okay.
Because I don't want to look at me.
Oh.
You
Oh,
look good.
it's great. It was so great when they came. It was so, can you imagine that they show up in London when I'm there for this whole thing?
Fantastic.
It was
Meg,
really great. You know, just one thing I want to say that about your work, and then I want everyone to talk. It's just that the Klamath River, they didn't just go to the Klamath River for hope. They went to Oklahoma to try to understand if there was going to be another Dust Bowl. And that was just this year. So you have both of those things going on, which are so strong together. So I wanted to point that out, but um,
I think the other thing, well, I would just say that I'm inspired by this group is that we've always tried, both of us have always tried to work on collaborations with other people, other artists, other scholars, scientists, whatever, to try and figure out, how, because we don't have all the answers. And it's fascinating to work with other people, share your work with other people, and get their feedback.
Right.
Uh, I see that in this group, what little I know of this group, um, that it's really inspirational to be able to share the work. And we all know collaborations are difficult. The photographic survey, Water in the West, and all this, they've had their moments. And take that with the benefit of what you've learned from other people, collaborate and other disciplines. So I just wanted to get that in because it is a theme for us.
yeah,
So,
and I do think that really appreciate what you're doing. And we do see that collaborative efforts like this are difficult. They're not easy. We know that from our own. But we're also really anxious to hear from your your efforts and your work. I mean, Susan's presentation last time was phenomenal. And I just think it's just that work. It's just
great.
fire. What we do as artists, I think you all know, is pretty weird. For most of our culture, we tend to be seen, but a lot of people just don't get it. And so it's helpful for us to be around people, like-minded people, that we can share our stories and our values and the things that we really care about. Anyway.
Great.
But you're right. I mean, I think that's one of the values that we've all found in this group is sharing problems. Remember, Stacy Levy was talking about that a little while ago. She had a problem. She wanted to bring it to the group, try to figure out how to solve it. And sharing is great. And then we can also, I think, we talk to each other even when we're not having a meeting, if we have something to share, recommend, or etc. So now hopefully you're part of the group.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I'd like to say something. Okay. Um, can you all hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
It was really, I mean, for me, it was amazing
To see this.
see this work again.
Yeah.
So much of this work again. Because it reminded me of how important the work that both of you have done for close to 50 years, or maybe it's been that long, and not just the impact that your work has had on photography, because both of you, as artist curator, artist historian, all of that has had such an impact on photography, but how much of that work has impacted the environmental movement over
Yeah.
last 40 plus years. So it was so great to see it.
It isn't, when Water in the West happened, you have to understand, I mean, barely, I mean, no one was paying attention to landscapes. The idea of landscape it was always going to shoved over all the pictures were people in cities. So just the idea of landscape was something, we're all from the West, so it wasn't that odd to us. But then when it became Water in the West, that was so new and different for all of us. It was great.
Santa, was that you in the photo
Yeah,
from the
that was
90s?
her. Yeah.
I was like, that looks like her.
I think
I
it was
was
the
young
80s. It was
once.
the
Yeah, I was
80s.
young
Yeah.
once. We were all young ones.
Well,
I love the
Younger,
fashion.
thinner, all of
yeah.
that.
The scope of the work is just stunning, and the duration and the commitment that you guys have done over the years is not just visually and intellectually stimulating, but it's inspiring on so many levels. Um, I also have taught photography at the Art Institute and done my share of photo history studying, and it's just so relevant, everything that you've done. I don't know how I've missed some of these books. I mean, wow, so many books, and the images are very, very powerful, um, and they educate. And I just want to say that the idea about restoration of wetlands and or undamming dams and what, the message, the sort of positive message that you're talking about, I really resonate with that these days. Giving people action items and hope, even in the face of such huge crises, is like so important. So just, yeah, I'm very moved by everything you've shown, and of course the names too, the locations, everything. It makes me think of a zillion things we could talk about, but thank you.
We can continue.
I'm so struck by the beauty of the images. We so often see ideas in photography expressed in a quite literal way, and you don't do that at all. The way you see, you slow down water here, you get back, find just this perfect place to tell a story. It works so well. It removes all resistance that people have to thinking about these images when they are so extraordinarily beautiful. I'm very moved by your work, and thank you so much for sharing it with us.
I think both of us have always, Tant and Meredith will agree, that we've always been in this kind of no man's land of not being environmental activists in the use of the photograph, and not being just a modernist, beautiful image. And we kind of float between, I guess it's getting the work out and hoping that it will help people think about the issue and bring some of their own ideas to it. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but I worked with an environmental group for 30 years and had my differences with some of the Sierra Club people who thought that, could only have beautiful Ansel Adams, Elliott Porter photographs, and that was how you're going to save the environment. And we had no agreement on it. So I softened my feelings on that recently. But I'm just somehow we fall in between these different, we're without a category.
Mm-hmm.
It strikes me that what you're doing is changing perception. And that's really powerful when it comes to water in the West, because of all the attitudes and history and ideas that people had in power. And so to take a photograph as you've done from these with different points of view and different questions, you really do shape the perception of which it then shapes attitudes, which then shapes the impact, how it's actually addressed, the questions and the problems. So I see that feels like a neutral, like perception is where you are. You're not in the most beautiful and not in the most activist, but you're altering perception.
Thank you. And I think also trying to work without a preconception of what you're going to prove or what you're going to do or how you're going to change somebody. Just going wandering is a big, both of us.
Yeah.
We go on road trips, we have ideas, we know where we want to go, but we don't know how we're going to document it or why. I think that's a big part of maybe what I learned from the rephotographic survey is that we tried to have no preconceptions about what we would find when we occupied the same place as how it stood 100 years ago.
I really appreciated your talk a lot. And I wanted to just, I'm going to write to the two of you. I'll get your address from Mayor, but I wanted to share with you just real quickly because everyone else here
This is
knows
great.
about
Yeah.
it. But I wrote this book called What Rivers Know. And it's about 25 international rivers, and it's written in the first person from the perspective of the water.
Mm.
So when you're talking about one of the essays is about the Narmada River, and these are all places I've been and hung out. I wish that I had met you all when I was there. And the other one is
Yeah.
the Siem Reap River at Angkor Wat.
Yeah.
And a lot about a river in Singapore when you're talking, Robert, about working, being artist in residence for a sewage treatment plant. No matter what I was teaching at the University of New Mexico, I would always take my students to the treatment plant here because it's so important that we understand. And Singapore,
Ah,
where Mira and Ben were, they actually brought me over at one point, is doing a lot to recycle their wastewater into drinking water.
yeah.
So there's a huge
New water. Yeah.
educational push
Yeah.
to have everybody understand what it is that they're doing. And I learned so much from being there. So I really, and I'm really, really happy that you're working along the Klamath right now because that is so important. And it sets a precedent all across the world, but all across the US in terms of what they are doing. So yay to you all.
And yay to showing the end of the rivers the way you did, and including the waste plant. You're talking about Basia. That is so interesting to follow it all the way through to the deltas or to the waste treatment plant in LA by Manhattan Beach, where the airport and the planes are taking off. The wastewater coming from Colorado River is going to all the way to the Pacific in that way. Those ends of the rivers are so poignant.
Yeah, well, there's so much to say, but I just want to jump in really quickly because I've traveled the length of the Rio Grande is almost 2,000 miles, and I've traveled the length of that twice. And the first time that I went to the Gulf was, and I talked about this some when I gave my lecture to you all a little while ago. We could, the river made it all the way to the Gulf. The second time I was there, it was totally dry and it was no longer flowing all the way to the Gulf. So just experiencing that personally, seeing what you're saying, Doug, about where rivers end, it's so important.
And the other thing you said, I'm sorry, one more point, like about showing the invisible is so poignant, in climate change generally writ large, like showing the insipid things that underground the water table and stuff like that in whatever way that you can that's also so important.
Maybe
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said about water, but I also wanted to say that I was kind of fascinated by your library project. Um, because libraries have such an interesting role now in our society. They've become the sort of town green, so to speak. And because that's where people go for information now. They don't go to the town green to get information. But libraries in the time of conflict, what did you find that they were doing? What?
Well, that goes into a whole kind of thing about what we want the book to be, but it's we've looked at um, like the example of the burning books from the Nazi book burning. How do you photograph the invisible or what's been purposely made to be disappeared? We've worked with refugees and with people that are setting up libraries and refugee camps, like in Greece and Italy. And also bibliocide, which is the intentional or accidental destruction of literature, of books, of libraries, uh, such as we just came back from Bosnia. We were in Sarajevo, photographing 3 different libraries that had been basically destroyed during the war in the 1990s intentionally destroyed by bullets and machine guns.
The erasure of memory.
Erasure of memory, erasure of culture, and very intentional. And we've been to the libraries in Florence to see how they're working on restoration of the books and manuscripts from the 1966 flood. And so this kind of restoration effort is ongoing to preserve the written word, to preserve videotapes, and all of this thing that now gets into how do we preserve our digital history. And that, so
Yeah.
this great project went on forever and ever and ever.
That's when we have to finish it, get it done.
But it all kind of, it does relate, and we're kind of keeping the
The image that you showed us, the photograph in where the books were burned in Germany,
yeah.
was that a hole that we were seeing?
Yeah.
It's a hole that an artist created that has bookshelves that would house the 20,000 books that were burned there.
So empty bookshelves.
Just
Yeah, there's a bunch of them throughout Berlin.
Oh, there are not just that one place.
There's
Oh.
10.
What a
Oh.
powerful project that is.
Yeah, amazing.
But what I love about what you're doing is I see the connection between you preserving history and then preserving the libraries. You're preserving the history of the water over time. And then also the library project, which I think is another preservation of over time.
that's
So-
inside.
Does that include seed banks and or Museum of Water or other libraries that are non-book related?
Yes, we have been, they're fascinating to think of libraries also being library of seeds.
Yeah.
Seed banks are one part of that.
Yeah.
Lots of non-book related archives of memory. And that's so much part of Sarajevo and seeing the memory of the Bosnian people was intentionally targeted for erasure because the Serbs wanted to just wipe them out. In our country today, with the books that we've banned, the idea that memory is important, and if we lose that, in some ways, like the people of Bosnia, they lose who they are. It's like having Alzheimer's. You can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's almost a form of death. So yeah.
Yeah. What have you considered photographing the Long Now project's super clock?
Well, we know about it, and we know what's his name.
What's his name? Yeah.
Yeah. But
Not Stewart. No,
Not
he's
Stuart Brand, it's this other man.
the other one. Yeah.
no, I mean, I don't know. Probably.
That's a bit more. That seems a little further. Yeah, apart. But
But one of the,
those Tibetan books that got destroyed. Of the history of Tibetan Buddhism and stuff. Those by the Chinese, right? I mean, it's kind of a legendary or Syrian destruction of things in more recent times. Just whole archives of culture being destroyed intentionally.
Well, Iraq is another example.
Yeah.
Meridel knows about from
Yeah.
their
Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal had the greatest library in Nineveh, which probably maybe 2500 BC, and it
Right.
was destroyed, but it's getting kind of restored. But we both were at the British Museum in the Mideast section where his books were tablets, and they have this row of his tablets from his library, and this library is always referred to. It was just the source of knowledge that got destroyed by, I guess, did ISIS destroy that, or was it destroyed way before?
destroyed way before.
Must be way before, right? Yeah.
Burned.
Although, but also I think of Gaza. I mean, Gaza is the worst place, the worst example right now.
Like books would burn. The tablets, they became very permanent.
Because tablets can't be destroyed. You just have to unearth them and decipher them. And so that's amazing. In fact, here's one for you. I don't know that I ever told you this, but the Bible, stories in the Bible The stories in the Bible came from Mesopotamia. And what happened was the Jews were slaves in Babylon. And I'm going to have to tell you the wrong date because it wasn't as far back, but they were, so it's kind of maybe like 500 BC. And then they're so smart that they became scribes. And they also did the Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud is from Babylon, but they also were scribes. So they're writing down all the stories that people are telling. There's an Eve in the story, and there's also Noah's flood. And so there are these biblical stories that then they take these stories back and write the Bible. The Bible was written after they returned with these stories. And I love that.
Mm.
So that's another kind of weird library from the tablets. Because it
The
was
library, yeah, the library connection is fascinating,
right. Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen the book Taking Measure Across the American Landscape, which is a collaboration between a photographer and who is a pilot, or one of them is a pilot and one of them is a geologist of some kind?
Yeah, very familiar. We might have it.
But
It
what did
might,
they do? What did they do?
It's just such a cool, like these two people, collaborating with this sort of photo and curatorial, intellectual historian sides. This is another duo.
Yeah, duo.
Maybe they're married, where they're flying in a small plane. They're taking pictures down like Emmett Gowan or something, but other kinds of pictures. But there's a lot of science in it, and it's really, like it says, taking measure across the landscape in a very cool way.
Sounds great. Can you put it on the chat? That really does sound good if
Yeah,
it's
that
still
sounds
in
I'll
print.
look for it. I'm on my phone,
Yeah.
but I don't want to lose you. But
No,
Okay,
don't.
you
Okay.
know what? I'll put it in there for you, Doug.
okay,
It's
thank
You know
you.
what? Thank you.
taking measure.
I think it's called Taking Measure
Taking
Across the
Measure.
American Landscape, and it's just a neat book. Like all those books from the '60s that they really did such an amazing job of combining images and science and the inquiry. Like there was a bright bubble back in that time frame of incredible books like that, and this is one I think from the '80s.
Thank you.
I just put in the chat, Doug, if you're not familiar with Dorna's
Oh, right. Oh, she's great.
work, because she's been doing work about archiving seeds. It's called Archiving Eden. And if you're not familiar with her work, I just put that in there.
Wonderful book.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to what's the name of where's the seed bank?
The way north,
Well, she
north.
did all this work right in the seed bank, but then she collected seeds and also did
Yeah.
all this work with seeds. The most beautiful. Oh my God, it's the place I really want to go, and my brain has lost the name of it. But I
Yeah.
wanted to bring up something. Just knowing these two for so long. I mean, I go back to 1977 with Ellen and Ellen's show. Great West Real Ideal was the first group show I was ever in. That was my first show ever. And but what I want to say was watching, I knew them separately and then together, that their interest, especially Bob's in the New Deal in Roosevelt, and understanding that he had to point to this because of what we were losing. And this is before we had Trump or had Biden or had Bush or anybody. Way back to understand about the commons. And that whole group, the Commons group, was so important to all of us.
I can remember way back at the Modern when I'm sure I saw the work that you did, the second, but wasn't there a major photographic show of that work?
not really it might have been the third view.
Ellen? Yeah.
Well,
That-
it was probably
that book-
photographic. The photographic.
Yeah, the second view. The
Maybe
second
Mark,
view.
did Mark have it at MoMA?
The actual project, Second View, never got a major exhibition.
I saw it somewhere and
Just
it
Mark-
just blew my mind.
Tom Southall did a big show at Oklahoma, or I can't remember. But Mark has had quite a few exhibitions, and I think he did have a big show at MoMA.
At
Maybe.
MoMA, so maybe that
But
was.
it wasn't part of that book that you were in,
Well,
that you produced with Joanne.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Joanne has had two one-person shows, but I'm not sure at MoMA. But I don't know. It may have had reference to it and stuff. Yeah.
But I was very taken by that a long, long time ago, the double view.
Yeah. And Mark has gone on and used what he calls third view and whatever, using the original work and then working.
Mhm.
So that may have been so.
And
Yeah.
the Smithsonian is going to do an exhibit this fall.
Yeah.
Right. Of part of the rephotographic survey and other survey.
Yeah, this is a while ago I saw it.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say thank you. I feel like I was just taking through this ride. It's almost like if you were a recording artist, you had like all these different albums of all these different genres, and they kind of all make sense like together, but they could live on their own. And also, I just felt that it was a reflection because as I saw some of your work, I thought of Linda's work, I thought of Frederica's work. And so, like, it was just like in my mind, I was just connecting the dots with how you were reflecting into the whole group and how you've had this creative life and creative partnership with each other, but also done your work and also work with other people. It was just, it was amazing to witness this. So thank you for the presentation. And I just really want to say that I love the photograph, like echoing what Frederica said. I just don't know how to describe it. The one that looks like a matcha latte. There's one that has green
Oh,
in
yeah,
the center.
Oh, that's
And
the wastewater. Oh, my
yeah,
God.
Is that
but
algae in the
It
middle?
just looks like
I was like, I know this is not drinkable, but it looks so beautiful. And it just made me think of like some of like the mirror photos for Federica has been working on. Anyways, I was just, and it was like research, like completely interdisciplinary all over the place, and it totally made sense. So I just really wanted to share my reaction because I was so excited to watch this and to listen to this, to your presentation. So thank you.
So great. I love that image too, and I really do think it's
That green. Oh, my God.
yeah.
a Victor Hugo quote.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
the words and the image together.
Great quotes. Yeah.
You know, while Robert, well, Bob to me, and Ellen were making all of this incredible work, you know, Bob was teaching
Yeah.
and has inspired so many young photographers that are now all they were not young anymore. And you know, Ellen was working for environmental organizations. So I mean their impact has just been enormous. So I just want to mention that as well.
I worked with a group called Earth Island Institute, and most people don't know about it, but it's kind of like Sierra Club. But
Yeah.
it was founded in 1982, I think. I was on the founding board, and the concept was to provide basically a home for individuals, activists who couldn't get any kind of support or encouragement. Sierra Club and NRDC and big organization, natural resources were too big. And so Earth Island became basically a home for people to come to us with an idea. They had to bring their own funding, and we provided legal advice, bookkeeping, payroll, all that shit that you have to do to make a project happen.
Yeah.
Now Earth Island is what, 40 years old now, based in Berkeley, and also, and they had, I'm not there anymore. They have about 80 projects around the world, which are mostly run by individual small groups that provide sort of the financial. We provide the financial.
To the umbrella. Yeah.
And
Are-
that's where I, what my
It- We have a sewage plant in Seattle, Washington, that they put all of the things to keep it running below water level. So we had this absolutely terrible amount of rain and it flooded. And
Oh,
the first thing that happened was thousands and thousands of gallons of sewage went in
Oh, God.
sound
Mm.
because, they couldn't fix anything. It went dead and there was nothing at all they could do. And I had an opportunity to take a group of scientists there to think about this whole cycle of the way water works from the moment we drink it until we end up there. And one of the things that was causing them so much trouble is this so-called flushable wipes that are not flushable at all. They end up stuck on the wall of all the sewage plants and cause enormous amounts of clogging and overflow. And to me, the horrible thing that happened with Seattle, they did move things so that they could stop it the next time they had this situation where it started overflowing. But they still, with the extra rain we're getting, the king tides, we're still getting these overflow flooding from the sewage plants. And I think that's happening all over the country because we are not prepared at all in the cities for the amount of sewage and waste that we're making and that we need to purify. And they put all those little bugs in, right, that were supposed to eat everything and solve the problem. Well, all the little bugs died. So
oh,
I
no.
mean, the whole thing is a total disaster.
That's awful.
Anyway,
That's awful.
I'm glad you're doing something with doing things with sewage plants is really, really important. People need to know big time about the individual impact on our sewage plants. We have 320 combined sewage outlets in New York City, pouring water, pouring crap and plastic and you name it into the Hudson River. All it takes is 1/10 of an inch to activate those sewage overflows. I mean, that is criminal.
That's awful.
So anyway, don't get me started on sewage.
It is a whole subject.
Well, I'll change the subject then. I just love how you merge or how you brought water and library together. And those are the two things that I love. And I also work at the library. So I really appreciate it. And I wanted to tell you about my former colleague, librarian, who actually went to Kosovo in the 1990s during that, I mean, after the conflict. Because when he learned about the libraries being burned or books being burned, and this is what he said, if you want a librarian to be mad, burn the books. So he made numerous trips and he collected, he documented, he took photographs, and then a decade later, he actually testified in, of the UN. And he was one of those witnesses testifying for, for evidence of the cultural heritage, destruction of a cultural heritage. So it's a really interesting point for me to see these, things about water, destruction of it, but also destruction of books that you mentioned, and the library as a place for preserving the knowledge and also identity, because when people witness their cultural heritages, especially libraries or museums being burned, they feel the loss of identity tremendously. And that's what they were saying. So it's really linked to our own belongings and being and identity. So the library as a public place or as a place, it's so important. So I really love that. And one more thing that I wanted to say, which is really ironic because I know this, I work at the library. Water is an enemy for books. So
Right.
we're always so afraid of water.
Humidity.
Oh, humidity, water, all
Yeah.
these things. So it's a kind of a ironic point.
I'm gonna write you, email you because we'd love to get that photographer's name and his work. That'd be great. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
You
do that.
never know when your photos or when your artwork will have meaning later. You were in Ukraine in 2006, and we visited and photographed all the libraries, Kyiv, another smaller city, and now we're trying to work with going back and working on how they're going to, they're planning already how they're going to rebuild. And part of it would be rebuilding the libraries, which all the libraries, almost all the libraries are still functioning. But we keep thinking maybe our photos would be useful in terms of that reconstruction and, you know, just inventorying what was there.
Yeah.
But that'd be interesting to hear the Sarajevo stuff too. The Kosovo.
Can I bring up a totally different subject to you, Ellen? Did you say that you went to Skidmore last time we spoke?
Did class of
So,
7.
okay. Well, do they know about all the stuff that you're doing? I just actually just saw Ian Barry at Art Basel, and it just hit me. Does he even know about you? Have you been in touch with the Tang Museum?
We've been there, and
Well, that's not enough. I mean, your work should be there.
yeah, no, that's a good idea for sure. And I think we've been in correspondence with him and
Okay.
there a couple of times, but no, I don't know.
Well, I'll be seeing him, and I'm going to make sure
Okay.
to tell him about the two of you. Really, in January, they're coming over. So, yeah, they should be doing something. I mean, you're an alumni and you're
Yeah,
important. So,
he's been there for quite a while, hasn't he? Because I
oh,
think
forever. Yeah, he started as a curator when I first met him, and he's now the director.
yeah, right. I think I met him the first when he just started there. So
Well, but so they're very interested in interdepartmental, activity. They're really brilliant for it and they're known for it. And certainly with the library at Skidmore and everything else you guys are doing in terms of the environment, it just seems like a natural for them to do something with you.
yeah, no, that's a good idea. And Bob was in the show there. What was it called?
Oh, well,
Malt?
wait a minute. Bob didn't go to Skidmore. You did. You should be having. So when did that happen, Bob? I mean, many years ago, or
Well, it's when Charlie Steinbeck went there, right?
Steinbeck.
Charlie and
So my next door neighbor, oh my God, what was his name? Because someone, the direct, so Ellen worked at the Friends of Photography and I was a board member and Charlie Steinbeck was director and
oh,
then
I know Charlie
and
Steinbeck.
when
Yes, yes,
Charlie
yes.
went to Tang, there
Yes,
was this other
yeah.
person who lived next door to
Yes,
me.
he was the director, and that's when I met Ian to begin with.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a while. It's
Yeah.
decades ago. Yeah.
But then Charlie's gone, so they don't know about Bob anymore.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
Ellen. Well, this is so great. It's so great how everybody contributed. Really, really wonderful. Wonderful. Does anybody else have anything to say before we move on to Gianna?
I just wanted to ask Bob and Ellen, you mentioned that the portfolio went to Reno. Are you gonna go to the Art and Environment Summit?
Yeah, I had the same question.
about it. It's coming up. So
Yeah, I got the email for it, but I wonder how much it's going to cost.
All right,
Well,
I didn't get it.
$500.
$500.
$500. So Diane, would you send it to me, the email? didn't get
Yeah,
it.
if I can find it.
Off
But
their
they
list.
didn't say
Off their list.
what it was, what the fees were this year, but it's definitely out.
That's
No,
right,
I'll
with
send it to the
Diane.
group.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's $500 if you enroll by a certain time, and otherwise it's $600. I'm already
Really?
signed up.
Oh, well,
I'm
okay.
going.
You're
When
going.
is it? When is it? In the summer?
April 15th, 16th.
Oh,
I have it
wow.
down in my calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, April 15th, 16th,
Yeah.
17th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
15 to 18.
yeah,
Okay.
it's going.
Everybody.
yeah.
Diana,
Well, that might be fun to all
Yeah,
get
let's
there.
go. I think that's where we met. I met Diane there. And-
No, I met you in New Mexico in Santa Fe.
oh, yeah, but then, no, I met
Right.
you there first. I met you there first.
Oh, did you?
What is
Yeah.
this? What is this?
Well,
Yeah,
this
no. Oh,
many
what
years ago.
what is the conference that
It's
you
an art
guys
and
Oh,
college.
the Art and Environment Conference is really
I'll put it,
major. And
I'll
they
put
haven't
it,
had one in a number of years.
Yeah.
I'm putting it in the chat
The
right
first
now.
ones were great, and then the next ones weren't so great.
Is
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I went to two of them. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it academic, Diane?
No,
No, it's fun. It's very social
they had the
and
Harrisons. They had great people the first few years, including the guy from the Long Now. But they had the Harrisons, and Lauren Bond was
right, the
there.
Harrisons. Yes, I was
That's
there
where I
when the
met.
Harrisons were
That's where I
there.
met Lauren Bond. Was what because she came.
Yes, Lauren Bond
Yeah,
spoke, but she's not on the program this time. I looked at the program.
to look at the program. They haven't been.
Yeah, it's
They
kind
haven't
of
been.
changed, but that one was wonderful.
They haven't had in the older days. They didn't have lots of women. So let's see what they have.
Yeah.
It's in the chat.
But so if anybody is interested, contact them. You have an archive.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
didn't know
I'm
what
in
you,
yeah, probably a lot of us are in their archive. So your
Yeah.
archive is there, both of you?
Well, they're collecting this water, the
But
water and
that's-
power.
Yeah.
That you saw that word.
But that's in the art collection, not the archive.
Right. there.
No, I'm in the archive and not the art collection.
And-
I would
There's the
prefer it the
archive.
other way.
And I'm supposed to give all the Iraq stuff to the archive, but I'm
What?
not. I'm supposed to give all the Iraq things, whatever that would be, to the
You
archive.
should. That would be
I just
great.
haven't had time to think about this.
Their archive is really important. I mean, it's over, 1,000, 1,500 people. Yeah, he
Yeah.
convinced me. And Bill Fox, by the way, is retiring.
No,
He did, yeah. And that's Sarah who's in charge, right?
Well, she's the archivist, yeah, but I'm sure they'll hire someone else to be the director of the Art and Environment Center.
actually, Bill, I was just there
Yeah.
and Bill was just in my studio a few months ago. He's officially retiring, but
I
he's
know.
he's being contracted though. He'll still be the director. He'll
Oh, I
still,
didn't know that. Really?
yes, he'll
He
still
just
be the
doesn't want to let
director.
go.
Sarah is the archivist. She's been the archivist for a long time.
Yes, she's very good.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
her.
So it went in, did it go into the altered landscape, that part of the museum, or did the Bob and Ellen?
That was it, but this is after that they've been in touch.
I'm asking them about where the portfolio went. Did they put it in the altered landscape?
it's going into the collection
In the museum, yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
purchased by Ann Wolf.
And
yeah.
both, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not in the archive.
No,
We-
I understand. I understand that. It's just they have the altered landscape collection not in the museum.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm
don't-
wondering if that's where it's going. Yeah, because I'm in that collection. I'm in both, right? So, yeah, I assume that's where it's gonna go. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's good. And yeah, it's a good place to know about people that aren't familiar with it. It's a really important. Seems to be active, and like some archives aren't at this one.
Yeah, oh, good, you've got it. Here it is.
Right.
Great, thank you. Okay, everybody, so now, if you've all spoken, Gianna wants to take some time to talk about the website, but maybe before we do that, Gianna, should we talk about who is coming up next? Who's taking care of the next meeting and with what subject? Frederica, I don't know.
How do you guys, how do you?
Well, this is all new that we're each taking a time.
Good.
It would have been,
I don't know if people are interested. This is not my work, but there's an organization where what they're doing is, the question was the commodification of nature. And in particular, Brazil, they've created a company that is protecting the water in Brazil and having the best way to explain it is sort of almost an insurance thing, but they're talking about the waterways and the air, everybody's, I don't know if people are familiar with the water rivers in the air.
Yeah, the rivers, yeah.
So they're getting China involved, Brazil involved. It's an interesting organization.
Could you put it in the chat? I'd be very interested in that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think Waimari can talk next
That's what
time?
I'm thinking. I mean, we did postpone her. She postponed herself. But that would be when, January? Because we said the spring, and I didn't really commit her to a. I could get in touch with her. Would it be, when's our next meeting, in January?
January. So early January.
Yeah. Have we set up dates
No,
yet for January?
no.
We didn't get beyond December, did we?
No.
No, that was the thing. We were waiting to figure out how to organize ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we're still waiting.
Getting a calendar would be a good start.
Well, I think
We only-
January 6th is almost too soon. Are we meeting every 2 months?
Every month. I thought every
Or
month.
I think we meet like 10 months of the year, because you usually, like, the summer we take 1 month off, and I think I don't know why I'm
So
thinking 10
January
months.
would be taking off from the holidays.
Because you know what, you're right, actually, Gianna, because what has happened historically is it's been 6 to 8 weeks. So that what happens over time is
Right.
that ends up being,
Yeah, you're right. About 6 to 8 weeks. It's not 10 weeks. It's more like 8.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I went back to look at it.
So February.
I mean, it's not
February.
bad, because we can make a list and people can just sign up to host. Like, it's only 10 meetings, and then we can curate it.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of on the spot because, that woman was supposed to be here. I could try to get in touch with Mary and see if she could do it in February.
Yeah.
And if we did it in February, I'm looking at the calendar, could it be around the 10th, which would be a Tuesday? There's a College Art Association meeting that I have to go to the next week, and then I'm away. Would Tuesday the 10th make sense for us?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
tell
Works for
you
me.
February?
You know what, I think we choose a
February.
date and whoever can come can come.
Yeah, but I have to get the speaker if that's what I'm
Yeah,
not
that's
sure.
good to see.
No, that's a given, but I say not to obsess over
You're right.
all. So Diane, what I'm going to say is when you get the speaker, just post it and we'll all come or not come as we can.
Okay, and we're agreeing on February 10th.
Yes.
That sounds good.
All right, I'll work
In the
on it.
calendar.
Okay.
That's a Tuesday, right?
Yeah, that's why I picked it.
Mhm.
Is it? I mean, double check.
It is. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay. And I guess I'm
And then-
supposed to, oh, yes, keep
Does
going.
anyone have any other ideas, just in case we can't get that woman on February 10th? Any
No,
other people in the pipeline?
Now, do you remember the person who, the conference we went to, the Indian woman who started regenerating all the rivers?
I don't
There-
remember any names. Yeah, I know. I don't remember any names.
No, okay. I think I've got her card somewhere, but do you think she'd be interesting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys heard her and you thought she was interesting, then she'll be interesting.
Now, you heard her, right? Speak also, because I thought she was pretty phenomenal.
Where did you hear her?
There's a conference at MIT on planet action and planet change that I get invited to. And I invited Nowie because she's
But we went different days. We went
What
different.
about Lisa? Did she go also?
she went the first year I invited. Yeah, I invited her. She didn't go this last year.
Put
I
that.
think I only get 4 invitations.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I'm
this-
just trying to see.
Is this woman East Indian or native?
East Indian.
East Indian, because then Bob and Ellen, didn't you have this image about this woman? Didn't you talk about this woman in relationship to Indian rivers and Indian River?
The woman That's the
Yeah.
activist who is in India.
So is that the same? Could it be the same woman?
Meridel, you know what I'm going to do is go back to my notes and go back to my
Okay.
cards.
Okay,
And then
good.
I'm going to, what I might do is just run it by maybe you, Meridel, if that's okay.
Sure.
If it's the same person, just,
Sure. Okay. And
it's
then,
just a thought.
but then we'll just put it on the back, we'll put this woman on the back burner if Diane's person can't.
Exactly. And
And then-
I'll try to reach out to her in the next
And then
week.
maybe then the March or whenever the next one would be,
Right.
April or whenever it would be, this, she might be the next.
Yeah.
person.
Well, maybe you could reach out to her and I can reach out to Walmary. So at least we have them in the pipeline. And if Walmart says, well, I'm going to be in Berlin or somewhere in February, it won't work. Maybe if this, you know what I mean? Like, let's have a backup, like a
Is it
plan
me
B.
reaching out or Ilana? Ilana, will you reach out to this woman? Yeah, that'd be great.
So I just put in the chat a link to a Google Doc. Maybe we can have a sign up because even if
Oh,
we
good.
get speakers, not for an ideal date,
Yeah,
that could be
great.
good. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
even if
that's
the
great.
person hosting the meeting is not whoever curates the speaker, but at least we can have it in one place.
Okay, that'd be great.
I love Google Docs.
I hate Google Docs, but I'll adjust.
I hate them too.
You can
I'm
just
so
email me,
old
Diane. That's
school. I'm
fine.
so old school. I use it, but I don't like it. Okay.
No,
Too
no, but
jittery.
you can
I will
text me.
adjust.
No. I'll put my phone number, but it's just like I'm happy to update it. But I feel like it should be
No, I can get it
consolidated
done.
someone. Oh.
I can get it done.
Okay. Okay. So now in our remaining time, we have to discuss the website.